This video is going to illustrate how we use Pythagorean theorem and the distance formula to analyze triangles. First of all, some quick review of important concepts. When we have a right triangle like what we had right there, angle A is 90 degrees, and what we call the sides that form the right angle, in other words, AC and AB are called legs. These are legs. And the longest side, which is BC in this case, is called hypotenuse. So line BC, or segment BC, is hypotenuse. I probably should have written that down to here, okay? Distance formula gives the distance between 2 points in a coordinate plane. So when I have a right angle, the easiest thing to do actually is to draw the coordinate plane by using the legs. So the legs are my x and y coordinates, and the distance between A and C, in this case because I placed the triangle on the origin, is just whatever the y coordinates indicate. And the distance between point B and point C, you have to use the distance formula and use the coordinates of the 2 points to calculate that. Okay? And here's the Pythagorean theorem. It says in a right triangle, the square of the length of the hypotenuse is equal to the sum of the squares of the length of the legs. So, so the important thing to remember is the square of the legs is equal to the sum of the squares of the legs. And it's a lot easier when we say c squared equals a squared plus b squared, but make sure that you're placing a and b on the legs, and c is the hypotenuse. And obviously angle C has to be 90 degrees, okay? So now let's look at this example. It's asking us to find the length of the hypotenuse, and obviously x squared, the hypotenuse squared, has to be the sum of the square of 5 and 12, right? That's the sum of the two legs. And if I simplify that, I should have 12 times 12 should be 144. And now I have 169. 169 happens to be 13 squared. So my final answer is x is 13. And therefore the hypotenuse is 13. And if you put the hypotenuse here, it makes sense, right? The hypotenuse has to be the longest side in the triangle, and obviously 13 is greater than 5 and 12. That's actually a really useful information to remember. I don't usually recommend people to memorize things, but a couple of things to memorize that helps with your calculation is a good thing. So when the legs are 12 and 5, the hypotenuse is 13. So if I give you the hypotenuse 13 and one of the legs is 5, you will know that the other leg has to be 12. Oops, sorry. Another coincidence is, I love this combination, is 3, 4, 5. If I have two legs, one is 3, one is 4, in a right angle, the hypotenuse has to be 5. Okay? Those are just some interesting things. Here is another example. It says, find the unknown side length, which is right here. The x is right there. Whoops, I didn't cover the x. Let's see. Use Pythagorean theorem. Notice that 2 out of the 3 sides is given. Also, it's given that it's a right angle here at 90 degrees, right here, right? I should use a different color for angles, right there. So we know the hypotenuse squared has to be the square of the legs, 2 legs, and added together. So in this case, I must have 14 squared has to equal 7 squared plus x squared. Now, if I just multiply them out, I should have, let's see, 14 times 14 is, if I rewrite 14 is 10 plus 4. So 14 times 10 plus 4. This gives me 140, and this gives me 50 6. So I should have 196 here. 7 times 7 is 49. Now if I subtract 49 from both sides, I should have 100, what do I have? 196 minus 50 is 146, so I have 147. There we go. And then if I take the square root on both sides, you can use a calculator. I don't have a calculator, so use a calculator. You should be able to find that answer fairly quickly. Distance formula. Let's analyze this one quickly. We've got a point A with x1, y1, point B with x2, y2, point C with x, what is that? x2 prime. Oh, I'm sorry, x2 and point B is x2, y2, and point C is x2, y1. So, which tells me that because of these two on the same x-axis, have the same x coordinates, it tells me that this angle is a right angle. And so my distance formula has to be x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Now, why is that? Notice that let's start with y. y2 minus y1. If I use the blue line, notice that y2 is the coordinate for point B, y coordinate for point B, which is my blue line. That represents the length of y2. Now if I use red to represent y1, y1 is the y coordinate of C. Now if I want to know the length of BC, which is the remainder, why don't I use black? If I want to know this part, the black part, right there, BC, that's BC. I can use the blue part, which is y2, minus the red part, which is y1, right? Because then I will get the length of BC, and that's one of the legs. And same argument for x1 and x2. Notice that x1 is right here. x2 is from 0 all the way to here. So if I want to know this part, x2 minus x1, I have to use the blue minus the red part here in order to have x2 minus y2. Okay? And then, of course, I used Pythagorean theorem because that was a right angle right there. So let's look at this example here. Here I have point D at 1, 2, point E at 3, -2. And I need to find the distance between them two. So once you find these two coordinates, 2 points and their coordinates on the plane, notice that you can draw a triangle right there. And if we have a triangle, we can use Pythagorean theorem, right? So also notice that my x1 is 1. My y1 is 2. And so my x2 is 3. My y2 is -2, right? -2 there, yep. So now if I use the Pythagorean theorem, I would take the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Again, x2 minus x1 gives me the length of one leg, and y2 minus y1 gives me the length of the second leg. And if I square them and add them together, that gives me the squared of the hypotenuse. So now if I plug in my numbers, x2 is 3 minus 1 squared, y2 is -2, ooh, negative number, I have to be careful, minus y1, which is 2 squared, so I should end up having 2 squared plus that's -4 squared, so I should have square root of 20. Square root of 20 is 4 times square root of 4 times, I'm sorry, it's about 2 root 2. So that's about 4.5, I would say. Okay, again, use your calculators and see if you find my calculation is correct or not. That's a 4.5. So the distance between E and D, D and E is about 4.5. Okay, guys, I will see you in class. I hope this makes sense. Ask questions if it doesn't. Bye.